I now hand the conference over to Mr. Krishna Kiran. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening and a warm welcome to our fourth quarter full year FY21 earnings call. I am Krishna Kiran from Aurobindo Pharma Investor Relations team. We hope you have received the Q1 FY21 financials and the press release that were sent out earlier. These are also available on our website. With me, we have our senior management team represented by Mr. P.V. Ramprasad Reddy, Chairman, Aurobindo Pharma USA, Mr. N. Govindarajan, Managing Director, Mr. Sanjeev Dani, COO, Head Formulation, Mr. Santanam Subramanian, CFO, Mr. Swami Iyer, CFO, Aurobindo Pharma USA, and Mr. Arvind Bothra, Head Investor Relations and Corporate Communication. We will begin the call with summary highlights from the management, followed by an interactive Q&A session. Please note that some of the matters we will discuss today are forward-looking, including and without limitation statements related to the implementation of strategic actions and other affirmations on our future business development and commercial performance. While these forward-looking statements exemplify our judgment and future expectations concerning the development of our business, a number of risks, uncertainties, and other important factors may cause actual developments and results to materially differ from our expectations. Aurobindo Pharma undertakes no obligation to publicly revise any forward-looking statement to reflect future events or circumstances. And with that, I will hand over the call to Mr. Santanam Subramanian for the highlights. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Krishna. Good evening, everyone. I hope that all of you and your families are safe. While the uncertainty due to pandemic continues, we at Aurobindo are trying our best to be at the forefront in fighting the challenge. We are committed in protecting the health and well-being of our employees, their families, and other stakeholders. Also, we would like to express our sincere gratitude towards the frontline and healthcare workers and our employees across the globe who are tirelessly working during this pandemic. We will now discuss the results for the fourth quarter and full financial year 2021 declared by the company. Please note that I will be referring to ex-macro financials. For the year, the company clocked a total revenue of 23,681 crores, an increase of 8% over last year. The EBITDA before forex and other income increased by 9% year-on-year to rupees 4,997 crores. EBITDA margin for the year was 21.1%, an improvement of 20 basis over the corresponding previous year, despite approximately 200 basis increase in R&D. Adjusted net profit, excluding the exceptional items, increased by 10% year-on-year to 2,992. I would like to draw your attention. The company has spent in R&D rupees 1,510 crores for the year against rupees 958 crores last year to augment the future growth. In Q4 FY 2021, revenue increased by 2.1% year-on-year to rupees 6,007 crores. The EBITDA before forex and other income stood at 1,276 crores, decreased by 2% year-on-year. EBITDA margin was at 21.2% for the quarter under review. Net profit declined by 5% year-on-year to 802 crores. However, this is not comparable fully as the last year includes export benefit rupees 83 crores, net of tax 68 crores, certain tax benefits like R&D, weighted direction, etc. We maintained the margin despite increase in R&D. We maintained the margin sequentially. In terms of the business breakdown, formulation business in FY21 witnessed a growth of 9% year-on-year to rupees 20,592 crores. For the quarter, formulation business clocked a revenue of 5,211 crores, increased by 2% year-on-year. API business clocked a revenue of 3,086 crores for the year. For the quarter, API business increased by 5% to rupees 794 crores. In the formulation business, US business posted a growth of 8% year-on-year to 11,231 crores in FY21. On a constant currency basis, US business increased by 4% year-on-year to around $1.5 billion. For the quarter, on a constant currency basis, US revenue ex-natural at $393 million, increased by 5% year-on-year. We have received the final approval of 9 ANDAs and launched 19 products in the quarter under review. For the year, we have received approval of 42 ANDAs and launched 53 products across oral, injectable, and OTC segments. We have filed 9 ANDAs during the quarter and 55 ANDAs during the year. Revenue of Aurobindo Pharma USA, the company marketing oral product in USA, has increased by 8% for the year and declined 5% year-on-year for the quarter due to lower sales from antibiotics. Revenue of Auromedics, our generic injectable business, declined by 10% year-on-year to $249 million for the year due to reduction in hospital procedures on the back of COVID-19. For the quarter, Auromedics sales increased by 13% year-on-year to $67 million. We have filed a total of 145 injectable ANDAs as on 31st March 2021, out of which 91 have received the final approval and the balance 54 are under review. European formulation revenues clocked to 6,061 crores in FY 2021, an increase of 2.3% growth over last year. For the quarter, European formulation revenues clocked to rupees 1,553 crores, declined by 6% over corresponding previous period due to stock up at the start of the pandemic in Q4 FY20. Growth markets witnessed a growth of 6% year-on-year to rupees 1,438 crores in FY 2021. For the quarter, growth market declined by 19% year-on-year basis to rupees 306 due to low patient footfall to hospitals and pharmacies in certain markets owing to COVID situation. In FY 2021, ARV formulation business grew by 49% year-on-year to rupees 1,863 crores. In Q4 FY21, ARV revenues grew by 29% year-on-year to rupees 491 crores. Our global generic injectable consolidated revenue is $395 million for the year. Apart from these, Acrotech, our branded injectable business, achieved a revenue of $103 million. R&D expenditure is at 457 crores during the quarter, which is 7.6% of the revenue. For the year, R&D expenditure is at 1,510 crores, which is at 6.1% of the revenue. CapEx for the quarter is around $88 million. The closing rupee versus US dollar was 73.11 in March 21 and rupee 73.06 in December 20. Net cash including investments at the end of March 21 was $113 million. The average finance cost is at 1.4%, mainly due to availing multiple currency loans. We would like to welcome Mr. Arvind Bothra to the Aurobindo family. He would be heading the investor relations and corporate communications at Aurobindo. We wish him a long and fruitful association with us. This is all from our end, and we are very happy to take your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Rahul Veera from Abakkus Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Sir, only one question. In Q4, we saw the ARV growth of around 29%. How much of that would you attribute towards the COVID-related molecules?
I don't think that this can be related to COVID-related molecule. Most of the growth has come from dolutegravir and its combinations, Rahul.
Okay. Fair point, sir. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one now. The next question is from the line of Damayanti Kerai from HSBC Securities and Capital Markets India Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Sir, can you provide update on our COVID-19 facility, like when you expect to complete the expansion, and also progress on the vaccine candidate UB612? Similarly, if you can provide us some update if there are some discussions are ongoing for the contract manufacturing, which we can see some fructification in near term. So that's my first question.
Oh, okay. That's three parts, Damayanti. Let me answer that first. I think the first question when you asked about the COVID facility, I presume is about the vaccine facility. Is that correct?
Yes, for COVID-19 vaccine facility.
Very good. So basically our viral vaccine facility equipments would all be installed and all the qualification for the equipments would be completed by June end. From July onwards, our process validation would start and we can continue the commercial after the process validation is completed. But meanwhile, our Vaxxinity, the COVAX companies UB612, they rechristened their name as Vaxxinity. Their product actually can be manufactured even in our existing bacterial facility because it is a non-vaccine, technically it's a peptide-based product, so it is not restricted that it has to be manufactured only in viral vaccine. It can get into a bacterial facility or even a general injectable facility. So to that extent that we have the facility ready for running the product right away. The second question is about UB612. Originally, the collaborator thought that they would do the trial in Brazil, and they had actually waited for 4 or 5 months to kick it off, but it did not work out because I think the variant was changing and they didn't want to drag that. Hence, they decided to do the trial in India. They had already filed for the phase 2/3 application to DCGI 2 days back, but we had even had a pre-submission discussion. So to that extent, we don't expect too much of queries since most of the queries have been already taken in consideration in the application. We expect the SEC approval to happen as we progress, and once that approval happens from the DCGI, we will be starting the trial in India. So that is as far as UB612 is concerned. The third question is related to your, can you repeat your question? The third question? The contract manufacturing.
Yes.
As far as contract manufacturing is concerned, we have been exploring opportunities, but as such, Vaxxinity itself is expecting their emergency usage authorization from Taiwan between mid of July to end of July. And they're already in discussion with us to start manufacturing in anticipation of that approval to start with, say, 25 million doses. It can be expanded as the requirement goes up. So yes, I think that opportunity as a contract manufacturing would also start in the near future. Does it answer your query?
Yeah, just a clarification. This 25 million doses to start, it's for the UB612 vaccine only for Taiwan market, right?
It need not be only for Taiwan market. Yes, it is for UB612 product only, but it is need not be based on the emergency authorization of Taiwan. They would apply for approvals in various countries. So it could be for a bunch of markets rather than only for Taiwan.
Okay, that helps, sir. So my second question is on vaccine facility at Vizag for Europe and ROW market. So again, what is the status of that facility? When do we start? When we can see start of supplies from that particular plant?
The facility in terms of the Europe facility or ROW facility is not a vaccine facility, it's an injectable facility. And the objective was because our current general injectable facility in Unit 4 is already chock-a-block in terms of supplying to the regular markets or rather US market. So we wanted to have flexibility in having capacity there as well as having dedicated capacity to focus on Europe and ROW market. So that would be ready in the next 12 to 14 months, Damayanti.
Yes, sir. My bad. I said it. Vaccine plant. Yeah, it's the injectable plant. And my final question: you are doing some capacity addition in the injectable part for the US market also. So, are you broadly done with those expansions?
Yeah, US plant is already in production.
Thank you. We would request the current participant to please come back in the question queue for any follow-up questions, as we have several participants waiting for their turn. The next question is from the line of Shyam Srinivasan from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question and good evening. Just the first one on the outlook for fiscal 22. If you could talk us about the main geographies. US, you had 50 launches. Just want to understand how should we look at the US business specifically, and maybe if you have a guidance for the rest of the business as well. That will be my first question.
Sam, you know that like we don't give forward-looking statement, but what I would only give you some sense of what is currently happening. As far as the US business is concerned, there is a bit of erosion. We always budget for a mid-single digit erosion, and we have seen that mid-single digit at this juncture. As we progress, we will recalibrate on how the market is performing. But as you are aware of it, that since we have several avenues in terms of the US market, so we don't see that could be a minor blip in terms of the short term. We don't expect that to continue for a longer term. That is as far as US is concerned. I would request Sanjeev to throw some light on Europe as well, and Europe and ROW as well.
Yeah. So in Europe, as you know, that vaccination is progressing very well, and we have seen about 40% of population being covered at least with one dose. And overall outlook is quite optimistic as compared to the previous quarter. We think that the footfall and the patient flow will resume in the hospital for elective surgery as well as in pharmacy. So we are quite optimistic that there will be normalization of situation as the summer progresses. However, we have to keep it in mind that there has been a stocking up last year, even in April. So some impact of that will be seen. In ROW, by and large, Canada and Brazil, there have been a lockdown situation, and there also the population will be covered 100%. I understand in Canada in a couple of months, and the situation should be normalizing.
Got it. Just stepping back, we are at 3.3 billion US. So just from a growth perspective, do you think there are still enough avenues for us to grow? We have been probably executing better over the last 2 to 3 years relative to say rest of the pharma. Just want to understand how should we, is there any broad guidelines we can keep in mind, and which are the engines you think will help drive growth going forward?
We have to look at it in a way where for the future, the company has been investing very well in terms of the differentiated portfolio. And I don't want to waste your time by running through the entire opportunity because you are aware of it starting from the peptide to depots to like vaccines to biosimilars to like I think Dermat portfolio to like I think there has been enough investment which has gone in. And the next 2 to 3 years, most of it would have reached a critical stage of commercialization, and definitely like I think we are absolutely convinced about like whatever investment which has been made, and we are confident about the return from those investments which has happened so far. Having said that, in the short term, till we reach that particular fructification of those opportunities, we have enough opportunity in terms of the filings which has happened in terms of our orals and also injectable. You already heard that in the next 3 years we would like to almost reach around $700 million. Over and above that, even in the general injectable, as you heard earlier, the European facility which should get ready, which will also like add to both the top and bottom line. So we have enough over and on the last one. I think we are also expanding in API in terms of ensuring that we have certain large volume products which will also like add the growth to the API as well. And you know about the PLA scheme as well. So we have enough engines which are also available to continue the growth is what our belief is. But you are also aware that we don't give any specific commitment in terms of the future numbers.
Got it. Thank you. Last question.
We are filing in this year 2 products and next year 2 products.
Yeah. So when will be the earliest biosimilar launch? Is it fiscal 22 or you think?
Second half of next year.
Fiscal 23, you mean? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Last question is on the
22.
22.
Not 23. Yeah. No. He thought it is 23. It is 22. Second half, he said.
Yeah.
Got it. Last question, Govind and team, is on margins. So we have seen, I recognize that R&D costs are going up, and you have called that out. But just from a perspective of, again, just looking ahead, how should we think about margins? Specifically, you're talking about injectables being a larger percentage of revenue. So just want to understand, how should we think about margins?
I think we see, as you are aware of it, we always had maintained that we would like to first put our efforts in maintaining the current margin before we start talking about the expansion. While the margin expansion would happen as we start getting into more of those newer opportunities which you had mentioned. In the interim, we'll be happy with the current margin, is what I would say. Like, yes, our efforts would be to improve it, but we also are conscious that we don't want to drop the margin as well.
Got it. Thank you and all the best.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amit Goel from Rare Enterprises. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. So this question also relates to injectables only. So like now that the injectables have become so large, like 400 million of generic and then 100 million of specialty injectables, which is much bigger than your competitor who listed. Could you give some color? Would you be interested in giving some color on the margins of this business? One. And the second is that, like, from the restructuring which seems to be going on, like which have been announced over the last 2-3 quarters, like more or less your injectable units except unit 4 seem to be all coming under Eugia. So what are the plans over there, sir, since you are consolidating everything over there? If you could throw some light over this.
Yeah. So as far as margin is concerned, Amit bhai, we are not separated so far, so I'm not going to separate it right now and give a specific number to you. As far as your restructuring is concerned, I think we'll be discussing more on this in our next board meeting, and we will take a decision, because currently we have already merged that Unit 16 and Aurocure facilities with the step-down subsidiary of Eugia. That has been done to also achieve the operational efficiencies and also to get better focus on the business segment. But obviously the board will evaluate various options to ensure the value creation for all stakeholders is always accrued. So that is something which definitely board will consider. So we'll be taking up in the next board meeting whenever it happens.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And sir, I've got one more question. Sir, in terms of like we've been hearing, like in terms of just like in Europe, it was said that a lot of elective surgeries and all got postponed and all, which will come back now. Would you envisage a similar situation in US, and would you have specifically lost some business which can come back?
Yeah, Swami would be able to specifically answer this. Swami?
Sure. Thank you, Mohit. So thanks for the question. Yes, in the US, we had seen loss of elective surgeries because of the pandemic. We have seen a good improvement in the recent past. And we're also seeing some more traction in terms of the customers wanting, the hospitals wanting to meet our territory managers. So we are cautiously optimistic on this.
Any number you would like to quantify in terms of how much you would have lost or anything like that?
No, all that I can tell you is that despite all the constraints, so despite the constraints we have been fairly stable. That's all I would like to say.
Okay. Thank you and all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanjala Samusalvalo from Centrum Broking Limited. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Sir, I understand that the vaccination is improving in the US and Europe region. So specifically, any observations like how far are we from a pre-COVID level? If you could help us understand that.
So I would put it this way, like I think the second half of the current financial year, we would prefer to have it, but as you would also appreciate that these are all predictions, these are all not based on a specific data saying that we will have it. This is we would be happy if we can get that. That's what I would say.
Any data comparison like footfall level or a prescription level, where do we see it? Anything that we have?
If you heard from what Swami said is that I think the footfalls have improved, but it has not reached the pre-COVID level. You might have heard that clearly. So to that extent, I think we are still waiting for that particular level of achieving the same marks like what we used to achieve in the past. It has not been achieved is what has been clarified. We would be happy to reach that level is what I am also trying to mention, ma'am.
Okay, sir. And sir,
today, Govind, as on today, the antibiotics sale, there is no much movement, but that is the barometer, antibiotics, cold medicines and those things where we are having. We have not seen much movement, but definitely we are expecting in the coming quarter onwards it will slowly improve, and maybe the correct par with the before years, maybe it will take another 4 quarters.
Okay.
Especially in the US and Europe.
Yeah, majority of the consumption would happen in winter, but the procurement will happen in summer. I think next 2-3 months we will have a clarity on where we stand, madam. At this juncture, it is fluid, is what I would say, specific to antibiotics, as Mr. Reddy was explaining.
Okay.
Antibiotics or any cough and cold medicines.
OTC also, yeah.
Sure, that's helpful, sir. And sir, a similar situation in Europe as well?
Yes. Same.
Okay. Okay. And sir, if we look at our overall business, we ex Natrol also now, we will be having more share from injectables. And if we consolidate everything, and if there is any opportunity that is going to be discussed, but how should we look at the business ex the injectable business, if there is any thought to it that you can share?
No, I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't get you. Like, I think when you can you repeat the precise question, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. So I'm saying that we have consolidated most of our injectable business under one entity right now, and we're planning to do that in the process. So if we look at our business ex injectable, so is there any thought process to look at the business like that?
No, so obviously, madam, when actually injectable business is part of this entity, and if you are trying to get it under one umbrella, so obviously without that umbrella will be the existing business. So, I mean, what exactly you are trying to drive it, I'm trying to understand that.
I'm saying, is there any thought process in terms of how should we look at the ex-injectable business for Aurobindo in terms of an entire consolidated entity? What would remain with us in terms of growth and...
Understand, madam. When we talk about currently the injectable consolidation, madam, I think we are talking about only as the earlier person mentioned the question, except Unit 4 at this juncture it has happened. Like, I think the only part we are talking about is Unit 4 at this juncture. But keeping that aside for a minute, we are let us take for an example about the existing business. Other than injectable, we have a pretty decent size at this juncture. Apart from that, we have a large investment which has been made on the differentiated portfolio, which includes biosimilars, as Mr. Reddy was explaining about 2 products getting filed this year, 2 products next year. There is a pipeline of products which are coming up in biosimilars. We have vaccines, we have peptide-based depots, and we have enough opportunities in the differentiated portfolio which are not necessarily part of this current injectable part we are talking about. So we have enough opportunity to grow the non-injectable business extremely well is what I would say at this juncture. Does it answer your query, madam?
Yes, absolutely, sir. Thank you so much. I'll join back with you. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitin Agarwal from DAM Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Going on the Eugia business, has the business, have we commercialized all the product approvals that we've got so far, or are we still waiting for the critical mass to meaningfully, to sort of growth? I think we were waiting for a certain number of product approvals to launch the business.
Yeah, so overall, 10 hormonal and 65 oncology products are under development with addressable market size of more than $45 billion. As on 31st March 21, we have filed 41 ANDAs, including 31 oncology, that is including the 13 orals and 18 injectable, and 10 hormonal products. So we have enough headroom for us to continue working on that. And at this juncture, we have got approval for 15 products, and we have launched 13 products.
Okay. And so, just on that point, during the quarter in the press release, you mentioned you launched 19 products, including 10 of the injectables. I mean, in your assessment, has there been any impact or a meaningful impact of these launches on the current quarter's revenues, or is it most of it is going to come through in the subsequent quarters?
I think you'll start seeing more of it in the coming quarters.
Okay. And our bag lines has also got recommissioned again, Government?
Yes, sir. 2 quarters back itself, if I remember it right. Okay. Mr. Reddy, I think 2 quarters back itself, we have pushed the bag into the...
Yes.
Okay. And last thing, if you can squeeze in this one, on the vaccine that you mentioned, Govind, that our capacities will come through in June. The other point you mentioned is the new viral vector capacity. You did mention that for the UB612, our existing capacities are enough to manufacture it. So how do we, what are we envisaging for, this is a large capacity that we put out, right, the new viral vaccine facilities. Once this, and how do you see that getting utilized over the next few quarters and years going forward? Because our own candidates are far behind. Our own internal development candidates, UB612, you mentioned you can do it in a current facility itself.
Yes, I think first of all, our UB612, even though like I clearly mentioned, our viral vaccine facility is getting completed in terms of all aspects of equipment qualification by June, and by July the process validation would start. We don't need to wait for that facility for producing even the UB612, because it can be even made in our existing PCB facility, because this product is not specifically like, I think it has to be, it doesn't need to be produced in a viral vaccine facility. It can be produced in PCB facility or even an injectable facility. To that extent, I think that is not a concern at all in terms of utilizing this product into the existing facility. And as the volume grows up, it can move into the newer facility, because please remember the fact that our PCV product, we expect the approval to happen somewhere in the middle of next year, and we need to start producing that product at least 5-6 months earlier, because it's a long synthesis and we need to be ready. So we have got a narrow window in terms of utilizing the PCV facility, and as soon as the new facility is commissioned, we'll move into that facility. That is as far as UB612 is concerned. From a capacity perspective, we had mentioned in the past, like I think we had around 250 million doses which could have been made in our existing PCV facility, and around 480 million doses can be made in terms of the new viral vaccine facility. And as of now, we are also looking at creating some more capacity if the need arises. But the most important point as to answer your question in terms of how those capacities would be utilized, I've already answered you for the PCV, how it will be utilized. The vaccinity itself currently are starting with 25 million, but they need large volumes as they progress. And by the time, I think, if everything goes well, which I have to be carefully wording it, because we are yet to get the phase 2-3 application approval from DCJ. If everything goes well, we can even look at some launch, approval in India towards the end or the beginning of next year. Then in that case, I think that facility would be not only catering to the vaccinated global market, it has to cater to the Indian market as well.
Okay, and if I can just add on that, exploring opportunities for further utilization of the capacities for any other contract manufacturing services for any of the other vaccine manufacturers.
We are exploring as well, Nitin, and anything which moves positively, I think you'll hear it from us.
Okay, thank you, and that's the last.
Thank you, Nitin.
Okay. The next question is from the line of Hadith Ahmad from Spark Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my questions. On the ARV segment, we've seen a 50% growth this year, and you commented on how the transition from TLE to TLD is driving this. So once this transition from TLE to TLD is completed, how should we think of the sustainability of the current base of revenues in this segment? Will there be a decline once the transition is moving forward?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to clarify one important aspect of it, that you cannot see a 50% jump because of the simple reason it is not that it has been growing and suddenly you've seen a 50% jump, because prior to the transition to dolutegravir, for almost a period of 2 to 3 years, it had a drop in business. I think from the peak it has come down. So from the drop-down business, it has now improved to this particular level. So over the next couple of years, at least starting from the current year and next year, you should look at more of a flat level or continuously, like I think maintaining this level is what I would say, or minor growth. You cannot see a continuing, like I think, such a double-digit growth and all. We are not budgeting for. We would be happy if we get it, but we are not budgeting because we expect to maintain this business is what I would say.
Okay. And on the biosimilar launch which you guided for in the second half of FY22. So, have there been any filings already, or we will be making filings in the coming months? How should we read that comment?
Yeah, first of all, I think I apologize in case if we have been misunderstood. What Mr. Reddy said is second half of next calendar year is what he was mentioning. which will be technically FY23. So that's when that numbers would arrive. Is that right, Mr. Reddy?
Yeah, it is a clear second half of FY22. Sorry, not FY22, calendar year 2022.
Yeah.
Okay. So earlier there was a guidance of making our first biosimilar filing towards the end of FY21. So have we been able to achieve those timelines in terms of our first few filings in biosimilars?
So the current status is we expect to file 2 products in the second half of this financial year, and that is what Mr. Reddy was talking about. Those launch would happen in the subsequent year. Considering even the 7 months of fixed review and considering some buffer, I think definitely that approval will happen and we'll be able to launch those products. Apart from that, Mr. Reddy has also already guided we'll be filing 2 more products the next year.
Okay. Last one, if I may. When I look at the operating cash flows for FY21, there is a decline compared to FY20, and this despite our EBITDA being higher and our working capital cycles remaining almost flat. So anything that you would want to call out here in terms of maybe some of the non-operating working capital items or any other reasons for a lower operating cash flow in FY21?
Our operating cash flow during the year is improved really. If I recollect, for FY20, that is 31/3/20, we made a total operating cash flow of around 392 million. 365 million if I'm right. But this year we have made an operating cash flow of around 421 million. So the total PBT for the year is around, I just put the broad numbers. The PBT for the year is around 612 million, and we had a depreciation of around 143 million, and we paid tax and others around 168 million. So the net cash inflow during the year is around 587 million, and we had the working capital and the small investments in various joint ventures, etc. So the net cash flow from operations is 421 million. And this 421 million, we have bought over Eugia, the balance share from the JV partner, that's taken away 105 million. We spent a capex of around 247 million. We got a net cash from Natural of around 435 million after the tax and other things. We paid a dividend of around 32 million. But the total free cash flow available after everything is around 475 million. And the net debt at the beginning of the year was net debt was 359, that is minus 359. Our free cash flow was around 472 million, and other investments we made around 43 million. So the closing cash, including the investment, is around 113 million. So we are better actually. This year we are better off because of one is the profits that improved, and second is compared to the last year working capital. Last year also we had the similar number for the working capital, because a similar number. But overall the cash part has improved really this year.
All right. Maybe I'll take the exact workings from Krishna offline. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sameer Baisiwala from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening, everyone. So is it possible for you to expand a bit more on your biosimilar strategy in terms of which countries would you be filing, and what kind of products are these that you're working on?
Yeah, I think the first 2 products we'll be filing for Europe, and it would get filed in US later, a bit later, because in Europe we got a waiver in terms of a phase 3. With the extended phase 1 itself, we are able to get an approval. That is the first 2 products would get into Europe. As far as the next 2 products, whatever Mr. Reddy had mentioned, is actually for the global market, including US and Europe.
Okay, great. And what kind of, are they immuno, onco, or what kind of products are they? Are these monoclonals or?
Yeah, onco-based biosimilars.
Onco, okay. All right. I get it, sir. Thank you. And The second question is there anything that you're seeing for the US market in terms of alternate channels? And when I say that, I'm referring to e-pharmacies or online, maybe, people like GoodRx or Amazon. Is this getting to be a meaningful part of your, sales?
Mr. Reddy, go ahead. Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Swami.
Chairman, sorry. Yeah. So as far as the e-commerce is concerned, we already launched some products in the e-commerce platform for the OTC products. And then we also have certain auction sites for some of the RX. With regard to Amazon, we have initiated some discussions. And we are looking at wherever opportunity comes in this area, we would like to look at it. But at this point of time, it's primarily limited to the OTC products.
So what's the outlook for this, say, in next 2 or 3 years on e-pharmacies, GoodRx, etc., and Amazon? Can this be a $500 million kind of a product? Will this be a big channel for the US?
I don't know if I can give you the number, but all that we know is Amazon Pharmacy has started selling the products to their pharmacy business, and we have to see how far that grows. They have started the recent past.
The base amount in OTC, even though is small, every year it is growing as a 100% basis, and we are going to see that, and we will reach in next 2-3 years in the OTC private label business. It may reach around 10 to 15 million business come only from this Amazon and those people. And we also listing the newer products in our new nutraceutical division. That's also we are listing. So things are the most growth is coming only from those areas only.
Okay, great. Thanks. If I may, last one from my side. Can you update us on your complex injectable products portfolio? How many you targeting to file as you go forward?
With this complex injectables, there is at least 15-20 products, and so-called depot injection, which we are talking since years together, and at last we are going to file. We are going to take the 4 products in exhibit batches in next 3-4 months, and where filing may happen end of this year or end of this financial year. And majority of the critical injectable, the major products in US plant, some because of some specialty manufacturing lines required. Those things now we are taking the exhibit batch in the pen injections, those things. So a lot of things are happening in the injectable side in the specialty products, difficult to develop products.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much and best wishes.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tarun from Old Bridge Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good evening. Good morning. A couple of questions from my side. If I look at the oral solids business in North America, ex-Natrol and ex-injectables, the business has grown about 8% on a year-on-year basis from about 1,060 million to about 1.18 billion. So just wanted to check, are there any specific drivers in this year which drove this business? It's almost a 8% constant currency growth.
Swami, you want to answer or shall I take?
Yeah, figures, I'm not very clear, Govind. This, other than this so-called one, we have OTC business is growing 30-40% in this year. And we have our branded business is very stable. There may not be this year is
his question is specific to oral solids have had a 8% growth. Is there a specific growth or is it a general growth? Is the question, sir? Okay, I'll put it this way, sir. The answer is like I think it is on any given year there can always be a few products which can be a star, sir. It is not that it has been budgeted, it has been planned. And you know that I think as far as oral solid business is concerned, there are one is the base business, which is the regular business which happens. The second is the launch of new products which can happen. Apart from that, we also got something called new business opportunities when somebody is not able to supply, that will come as an NBO. And typically in NBO, sir, we have for probably 10-15% better margin than the regular products what we can have. And the final one is something called one-time business, sir. Like I think that is not on a contract or long-term basis. One time they will come and buy it, and that again has a better margin than the typical products. So what happens is that because of the length and breadth of the portfolio what we have, sir, suddenly in the specific year there can always be a couple of products we will get opportunities and we will be able to take advantage of it. Since we are also backward integrated, we are able to cater to that need across the entire spectrum, whatever I had mentioned.
Got it. Thank you. My second question, your Europe business clocked about 700 million euros in FY21. It was largely flat if I were to normalize the pile-up that happened in Q4 FY20. So given how all the investments are already made in this part of the business, from a medium-term perspective, how do we see this and how should we see it significantly helping in margin expansion?
Yeah. So actually, you said rightly that the top line is definitely governed by the external market growth rate. However, below the top line, there have been significant growth levers which are working. First is about switching the product to the lower cost base, like in India. And second is launch of the new products into our 11 focus countries. So during the year, we had improvement of almost 36% volume being sourced from India. So that is improving the margin. Plus, we are talking about launching the new products. As you heard, we have more than 200 products under development in general category, which will be launched over the next 2 to 3 years. Plus, Eugia Oncology, we have 55 products under development, out of which 5 have already been launched in last 1 year and 2 more being launched this quarter. Plus, we have not launched Ertapenem, and the Penem block is being expanded, so we will be launching and looking forward to that very soon. Plus, you heard about the Vizag injectable general injectable plant, which will be in operation, and we are developing close to 50 products, which is going to be very helpful for our hospital task forces which are there. And we have a very good market share in a hospital with products which are sourced from Europe. And plus the biosimilar which will be filed next quarter. So you can have a complete picture that we are moving towards higher margin products and opportunities.
Okay. Thanks. And the final question, so you have about $800 million of cash in books. Are there any inorganic opportunities, some bolt-on inorganic opportunities that you're looking at? Or should we look at this cash moving forward from these levels?
No, as far as inorganic opportunities is go ahead.
First of all, we don't have 800 million cash.
Well, this 800 million cash don't go by, because these are all the numbers which are coming at the end of the quarter, because there will be quite a lot of collections which will come on 27, 28, 29, 30 like that, which will automatically be used to repay it, right? So 800 million is on a particular date. That is it. Okay.
So on the inorganic opportunities, sir, we have a very clear defined way, which is in terms of I think we will look at it in case if there is a market expansion possibility or any portfolio. That's how we have done Profectus Life Sciences, and that's how the market expansion is when we have done Apotex Eastern Europe as well. So I think we will definitely keep continuously looking for these two defined ways. We are not looking at any large ticket acquisition at this juncture. There can always be medium ticket sizes which can happen as we progress if there are some value add possible, because suppose if there are some people who are having a set of ANDAs which will fill in the gap in terms of our existing portfolio, we'll be happy to do that. So such opportunities will definitely be happy about it, but we are definitely not looking at any large ticket for at least the next couple of years. Anything you would like to add, Mr. Reddy, on this?
No, wherever is required, we are investing wherever the good opportunities are there. And otherwise, we have recently in the branded one also we have invested in some unknown customer. And I think we will continue to invest in either preferably organic is less and more on the requirement based in licensing or the smaller wherever the gaps are there, we are going to invest continuously.
That's helpful. Thank you, sir, and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prakash Agarwal from Axis Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My question is on this restructuring exercise that you're doing on the injectable side. I understand you've taken unit 16 to Ujia, but what about unit 4? How do we think this asset, why not consolidate the entire injectable business?
We will consider it at an appropriate time is what we said, Prakash. Earlier itself, this question was raised and we had answered that the board will consider this at an appropriate time, or even we had even mentioned it will be considered in the next board meeting is what we had said.
Okay. I mean, that is part of the plan is what I'm trying to understand, right?
That is what is being evaluated is what I would say. You cannot say anything firmly until another is the board approves, Prakash. You would agree with that?
Okay, understood. And secondly, on raw material side, we have seen some companies talking about, increase in API prices for particular products. How are we placed for the upcoming quarters?
Yeah, as far as API is concerned, I think you would appreciate the fact that external sales still predominantly is antibiotics, and almost 60% would be antibiotics, 40% would be non-antibiotics. As far as antibiotics is concerned, you have heard enough from us. On non-antibiotics, selectively we are seeing some price improvement, but not en masse is what I would say.
No, I meant from our gross margin perspective. I mean, we use our in-house, but we also import a lot of intermediates and API, right? So I'm trying to understand that how does the gross margin look from here?
It differs from we cannot again mention it as en masse. There are certain products, specific products, certainly because of the non-availability of raw material or the raw material supplier has increased the price, there are certain specific products, they have increased the price as well. But you cannot generalize it is what I'm trying to tell, Prakash.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and last one on ARV side, you saw phenomenal growth with TLD, TLE moving. But how do we see the year ahead? Sorry if you have already answered.
We'd be happy to maintain the current level. We'd be happy in case of minor growth happens, but we don't expect a tectonic growth on ARV portfolio for at least next 1 or 2 years. Because you would remember, Prakash, when the transition happened from into dolutegravir regime, I think you remember we had a drop in business for a couple of years, and then only dolutegravir started picking up. So we have reached now a stable level, and we'd be happy to maintain this level for at least 1 or 2 years.
Maintain the growth or maintain the absolute?
Maintain the business, current business. We are not talking about maintaining growth.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much and all the best.
You're welcome, Prakash.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ritesh Rathod from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Hi everyone. I hope you haven't answered this one. I joined a bit late. Any thoughts on dividend payout given the high cash balance on the books and what we are going to accumulate in next couple of years?
I think you might have seen that we already announced that we are going ahead with PLI scheme. We are also looking at expanding injectable business by creating a capacity in Vizag. Plus, we are investing in API capacity creation. So, after considering all this, I think we will always decide about the board will consider all this and then take the decision on the dividend. So, obviously, I think the current level, these capex also has to be focused on.
Okay. So basically, it will be in line with the historical number, is what you are thinking, or that will be revalued once this thing is done after a couple of years?
Yeah, so my answer is that I think the board will consider the current capexes and they will decide. But one thing is I think we have been fairly, like I think, distributing dividend and even slightly improved in the last year or two. Like I think we would like to look at, like I think, maintaining, ensuring that at least first dividend is paid, and whatever improvement can be made always would be considered by the board.
Okay. That's fine.
Thank you. The next person is from the line of Surya Patra from Phillip Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. Sir, if you can just indicate about you mentioned about the commercialization of this new US injectable facility. So whether it is ready for commercialization, whether it has completed all the inspection and all that, or how significant this capacity would be as a kind of incremental growth driver for our US injectable business. Any color on that, please?
Currently, the exhibit batches are being run, and as we progress, I think we would give more color in terms of the size and shape on what it can take.
Okay. No, and why? Because the specific question was because we are having that capacity constraint, and that is why we have created two dedicated ones. One in US for US and in India for U and as well as ROW. So that is why I was trying to understand that, okay, while there is a kind of double growth guidance that is there on the injectable side over 3 to 4 year time frame, but how significant this asset could be, or would we require additional capex to achieve that? So that was my specific point. So that's why.
I don't think that we need to have, other than whatever we have mentioned about the Vizag capacity and commissioning the US capacity, additional capacity for reaching the number what has been projected already. That is number one. But two is the currently US facility. Mr. Reddy also might correct me if I'm wrong. Like I think around 20 products exhibit batches will be run 12 to 14 months. So obviously, like I think this facility, the objective is, I think that this US facility has two objectives. One is this is for more of high value, low volume product, and also the mitigation for US market as far as Unit 4 is concerned. So definitely it's a very important capacity, and this will also add value in terms of our larger goal of reaching the 700 crores. This will also play a role apart from the Vizag facility and Unit 4 as well.
Okay. My second question is on the European business side, sir. So is it possible to share what is the portion of that EU business currently would be exported from India? And let's say last full year, what margin that we have achieved for the European operation?
We crossed about 50% of volume sold in Europe being sourced from India now. And we have a double-digit percentage in EBITDA margin in business on the whole.
Okay. This margin indication in the previous quarter, you had mentioned, I think 15% the blended margin for European region. I think that was a kind of...
That was without Apotex. As you know, the Apotex business of 150 million euro, that is a loss-making one. And we were earlier looking at like-to-like comparison, which was previous acquisition of Examix, our organic launches. But after the loss-making business of Apotex, which was close to 20%, we have again regained to double-digit percentage.
Okay. But so in fact, my another extended question on this Europe is that, see, from various studies that we are finding, this Indian export to Europe was one of the best in last 1 year period. And I think that was a kind of a trend reversal in terms of growth, Indian pharma export to Europe. It's been over last 1 decade kind of a very low single digit kind of a growing business otherwise. But now that was about industry as a whole. But so far as, so given the kind of strong export trend what we observed for the industry, our performance looks muted on against that. So, and that is one. And secondly, any specific reason that we are seeing sequential decline in the European business?
First of all, as I mentioned in response to earlier question, Aurobindo Pharma exported volume increased by 36% last year in FY21. Okay, so when you are looking at the export out of India to Europe, it was definitely led by Aurobindo Pharma in terms of volume. And that was because we switched 13 products from Europe to India last year to a lower cost base, and also 10 new products were launched. So totally 23 products were added to the portfolio. Now we are exporting close to 225 products to Europe, and that's why I said that whatever volume we are selling in Europe, now more than 50% is being sourced from India. And you are looking at only the India export to Europe, but we are sourcing another 50% of volume from Europe itself to sell in Europe. So that growth rate is separate. Now, sequentially, if you are talking as well as YOY, first of all, the YOY basis last year, the same quarter 4 of FY20, we had 26% growth in euro terms.
Correct.
And as you are aware that the markets are growing only about 2 to 4%. So that was because of the stocking up which happened in the COVID-related situation. You know that Italy and Spain were the first of the countries which were affected, and there was a high stocking up happened in February and March, and some countries followed in April also. And out of 26% growth of euro terms, we expect that at least 15 to 18% were stock up.
Okay.
So when you are looking at last year, this quarter, 207 million euro that we sold, close to 37 million, we think it was because of stock up. And that's why the real base was 170 million, and this quarter, which we are reviewing right now, is 177 million. So we have not lost sale. We have grown, if at all, slightly. Yes, it is below expectation, but then the market is degrowing. And in fact, I just reviewed normal patient footfall is not more than 7 out of 10 as compared to pre-COVID. So we expect that actually now Germany and other UK also, even though it's not part of Europe strictly speaking, but they have already crossed 40 and 50% of the population in vaccination. It is catching up very well, even in Italy and Spain and other countries. So we think that the summer is going to be coming back to very much normal, and we are optimistic that footfall will come back to normal, but we can say only as the time goes by.
Okay. And sir, if you can just briefly share about your antibiotic share in the overall European business, and also similar.
I have a request, sir. Like I think there are still 1 or 2 participants might have questions, sir. If you don't mind, would you like to run it through Krishna later offline and we can answer that, sir? I'm sorry about this.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nishit Shah from Ambika Fincap. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Govind, just a follow-up question on vaccine. You mentioned earlier that the trials are going on for UB612 in Taiwan, and results are expected sometime in July, middle of July. Now with the revised guidelines of Government of India, if that trial is WHO approved, can we use that trial data to start producing and selling in India also?
No, sir, because they have clearly mentioned the countries which they will encourage in terms of US, Europe and Japan. And unfortunately, Taiwan is not part of the list which would be accepted by the Indian government in terms of replicating their emergency usage authorization issued by. But at the same time, they can always consider their immunogenicity data, which can save some time for us, but not they cannot give an emergency usage based on Taiwan approval.
So we will need to do a clinical trial out here, and that would take how many months according to you?
So I think the clinical trial, if you are talking about the full subjects, might take more time, but there are certain criteria based on that we can request for an earlier approval in terms of emergency usage authorization, subject to triggering certain aspects, sir. Those are like part of that calculation, like they say n equal to 60 or 70, once they reach, they can ask for emergency usage authorization. So that can happen earlier.
Right. So basically, it will take couple of months before we start selling it in India. But
No,
in the meanwhile,
No, Shiva. I am not saying to a couple of months it will happen. I'd be happy in case if it happens towards the end of the year, end of the calendar year, or beginning of next calendar year. I would be happy. So definitely it will not happen in the next 2 months.
and what about WHO and the UNICEF related sales? Because we have arrangement whereby we have India, WHO and UNICEF. So for that also we'll need to do a separate trial?
No, you don't need to, sir. That approval is, they would give the approval once Indian emergency usage authorization is arrived. They will, UNICEF and Gavi also can buy from this.
Okay, understood. Okay, and they will be able to sell only in Taiwan. That's what once the Taiwan approval comes, right?
No, sir. What I mentioned earlier is based on the Taiwan approval, they would be applying and getting approval in certain other countries which are willing to accept the Taiwan emergency usage authorization. That is why they are planning to make some product and keep it ready, and then they will increase the volume as they see more progress in the sale of that product.
So if I may ask, which are the countries where they will be targeting or where they will be able to sell Govin?
There are certain Central America, Latin American countries they had mentioned, sir. I don't want to get into the specific country name because it might be confidential for the collaborators, sir.
Correct. Okay, thanks a lot. Most of the other questions have been answered. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you, Nishit.
Thank you. That was the last question. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you all for joining us on the call. If you have any question unanswered, please keep in touch with Investor Relations. The transcript of this call will be uploaded on our website, www.aurobindo.com, in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Aurobindo Pharma Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.